Welcome to Complete Aviation Solutions, Deep Dive number 24. We're going to be looking at some of the latest developments in the Asian aviation market.
Sounds fascinating. Where are we headed first?
We've got three really interesting articles from Asian Aviation magazine to guide us through this. So our first stop is going to be Air India and the Lufthansa Group. They're expanding their code share agreement quite a bit.
Oh, interesting.
And for the first time, they're bringing Austrian Airlines into the mix.
Wow, okay. That's a lot of airlines. What does that mean in terms of routes?
Yeah, so it adds close to 100 code share routes across a huge network. So we're talking 12 Indian cities connecting to 26 European cities.
So that means a lot more options for passengers, right?
Tons. Like, imagine you're flying Air India to Frankfurt, but you actually need to get to Amsterdam.
Right.
With this code share, you can just seamlessly connect onto a Lufthansa or a Swiss or Austrian Airlines flight. All on one ticket. No rechecking bags.
That's super convenient. I'm sure passengers will appreciate that. What about flights from Europe to India? Are there more options there too?
Absolutely. Passengers flying with any of the Lufthansa Group airlines will now have access to 15 destinations within India.
Oh, wow. So like even places like Goa?
Yep, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it really just opens up a ton more travel options. And we can't forget about frequent flyer benefits.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You know you're going to be able to earn and redeem miles across all four airlines. Could make things a lot more flexible.
For sure. And potentially get rewards faster too. What are the airlines saying about all of this?
They're both really emphasizing how this partnership is not just good for them, but it's good for the passengers.
Right.
You know, they want to create a smoother travel experience.
Makes sense. Okay, so what's the next exciting development in Asian aviation?
Well, our second story takes us to Indonesia, where BBN Airlines Indonesia is using a very interesting business model to meet the rising demand for air travel in the region.
Okay, I'm curious. Tell me more.
So they're focusing on ACMI. Are you familiar with that term?
I've heard of it. It stands for aircraft, crew, maintenance, and insurance, right?
Exactly. So they're basically leasing out their planes and all the associated services to other airlines.
Oh, I see. So instead of airlines having to buy and manage their own fleet of planes, they
Right.
can lease them from BBN Airlines Indonesia.
That's it. It's very flexible. And it seems to be becoming more and more popular these days.
Well, especially with how unpredictable things have been lately, it makes sense that airlines would want that flexibility.
Absolutely. And they're already working with partners like Sriwijaya Air. They're boosting domestic flight capacity, especially in eastern Indonesia. And they're not limiting themselves to Indonesia. They've also worked with international carriers like SpiceJet over in South Asia.
So they're really making a name for themselves in the region.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is their chairman, Martinez Krigas, has talked about how committed they are, not just to their own success, but to the success of the whole Indonesian aviation ecosystem.
That's great to hear. So they're not just in it for themselves.
Right. They want to help the whole industry recover and grow. And what's amazing is they can deploy an aircraft and a crew within 2 to 4 weeks of an agreement.
Wow. That's incredibly fast for the aviation
I
industry.
know, it's pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Okay, so for our last story in this segment, we're going to head over to Tasmania.
Tasmania, okay. What's happening there?
Launceston Airport is undergoing a major renovation.
Oh, cool. Are they just sprucing things up a bit, or is it something bigger?
It's a total reimagining,
Mm-hmm.
multi-million-dollar transformation. They're trying to give travelers a world-class experience, but with like a really Tasmanian feel.
So they're incorporating local elements into the design.
Absolutely. They're using design elements that really showcase the island's landscapes and its waterways. And then they're adding these 3 new food and beverage venues.
Okay, tell me about them. I'm always up for trying new airport food.
Okay, so first you've got Gaddy's Bar and Kitchen.
Gaddy's.
It's named after Harold Gaddy, the Tasmanian aviator.
Yeah.
Then you've got Kanamaluka Cafe.
I love that name.
Yeah, it's the Aboriginal word for the Tamar River.
Oh, wow. That's cool. So they're incorporating indigenous culture, too.
Yeah, and then if you want something a bit healthier, there's Live Eat.
Okay, I've heard of that one. They have really good food. And it's Tasmanian, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's not just the names. Each venue is designed to reflect the natural beauty of Tasmania. They're also expanding the departures hall itself. More space for passengers, panoramic views, fast Wi-Fi, charging points. You know, all the things you need these days.
It sounds like they're really trying to create a destination in itself.
Yeah, they want people to experience Tasmania as soon as they step off the plane.
Okay.
And they're even working closely with the company that's running the food and beverage venues, SSP, to make sure that the food is authentic and uses local ingredients.
That's fantastic. It's a great way to support the local economy. So we've got airlines partnering up, new business models emerging, and airports getting a major makeover. What do you think is the common thread running through all these stories?
I think it's collaboration.
Hmm.
We're seeing airlines working together, airports partnering with local businesses. It seems like the aviation industry is really focused on creating a better, more connected travel experience.
Yeah.
And not just in Asia, but all over the world.
Yeah, I see that too. It's a really positive trend. I'm excited to see what else we uncover in this deep dive.
Yeah.
It's interesting how flexibility seems to be a big theme running through a lot of these Asian aviation articles. We saw it with that code share agreement, and it's a big part of our next story too. We're going to go back to BBN Airlines Indonesia
Okay.
and their strategic focus on that ACMI business model.
Right, right. They really seem to have found something that works well, especially with how unpredictable things have been lately.
Yeah, and remember, ACMI stands for Aircraft, Crew, Maintenance, and Insurance. So it's basically a whole package deal for airlines that are looking to lease aircraft.
Yeah, so instead of having to go out and, buy their own planes, get all the crews together, maintenance, all that,
Right.
they can just lease everything they need from BBN Airlines Indonesia.
It's a pretty smart approach, especially for airlines operating in regions where travel demand is growing really quickly, like we were talking about with Sriwijaya Air.
Hmm.
Expanding their domestic flights, particularly in eastern Indonesia, where, tourism is really starting to pick up.
And they're not just working with Indonesian airlines, right? I mean, they're helping out international carriers like SpiceJet in South Asia.
Yeah, exactly. So they're really demonstrating that this business model can work on a global scale.
What's also impressive is, BBN Airlines, Indonesia's chairman, Martinez Grigas, has talked about how committed they are to the entire Indonesian aviation sector.
It's always good to see a company that's not just focused on its own bottom line, but also on the well-being of the whole industry.
Yeah, and they're putting their money where their mouth is.
Mm.
I mean, they can have a plane and a crew up and running in just 2 to 4 weeks after signing an agreement.
Wow. That's a pretty fast turnaround time.
It's almost unheard of in this industry. Makes you think of the tech world where everything moves at lightning speed.
Yeah, it seems like the aviation industry is starting to embrace that same kind of agility and responsiveness.
Okay, so we've talked about how airlines are working together, how they're adapting to the changing landscape, but let's look at how individual airlines are doing in this new era of travel.
All right.
Cathay Pacific and Singapore Airlines, two of the big players in Asian aviation, recently released their figures for January 2025.
Interesting. What are the numbers looking like?
Well, for Cathay Pacific, they saw a big surge in passenger numbers, a 37% increase compared to January 2024. And their available seat kilometers, that's basically a measure of their passenger carrying capacity, also jumped by almost 31%.
So a pretty strong rebound in travel demand.
Yeah, and it looks like a lot of it is coming from the leisure sector.
People are ready to get back out there and explore.
But it's not just leisure travel. Cathay Pacific also noted a resurgence in business travel.
Oh, that's good news. Business travel was hit pretty hard by the pandemic, so it's encouraging to see that starting to recover.
They even set a new post-pandemic record for passengers carried in a single day, over 110,000 passengers on January 25th.
Wow, that's a lot of people. Must have been during Lunar New Year travel peak.
Exactly. And they're not just sitting back and letting this wave of demand carry them. They're actively expanding their network, planning to reach 100 passenger destinations worldwide this year.
So they're taking advantage of this momentum to grow their reach.
Yeah, that includes bringing back direct flights to Rome and launching new routes by their subsidiary, HK Express.
Okay, so what about Singapore Airlines? How are they doing?
They're also seeing robust travel demand, especially during that Lunar New Year holiday period. Their group passenger traffic rose by 8.6% in January 2025.
A healthy increase for sure.
But their capacity increase was a bit lower at 5.5%.
So what does that tell us?
Well, it means their passenger load factor, the percentage of seats that are filled on each flight, went up. They hit 87.8%.
So they're operating more efficiently, filling up more seats on each flight. That's good for their profitability.
And like Cathay Pacific, they're also strategically expanding their network. They recently launched new passenger services to Padang in Indonesia and Shantou in China.
Interesting. So they're targeting key destinations that are likely to see strong demand.
Exactly. So both Cathay Pacific and Singapore Airlines are really showing their commitment to growth and expansion. They're capitalizing on the return of travel demand. But it's not all sunshine and roses.
Ah, what's the catch?
Both airlines mentioned a softening in cargo demand after the Lunar New Year holiday period.
Ah, so the global economic slowdown might be starting to impact air freight.
Yeah, it's a bit of a reminder that the aviation industry is still very much connected to the global economy and subject to its ups and downs.
That's a good point. So we're seeing some really positive trends in passenger travel, but there are still some challenges on the horizon. It'll be interesting to see how things play out in the coming months.
I agree. As we delve deeper into all of this, what do you see as the bigger implications for the future of air travel, not just in Asia, but globally?
Well, it's pretty clear that the aviation industry is going through a period of transition, but it's also showing how resilient and adaptable it can be. The pandemic forced airlines and airports to rethink their strategies and come up with new ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And we're seeing a lot of innovation as a result, like the rise of flexible business models like ACMI or the focus on improving the passenger experience through collaboration and partnerships.
And it's not just the airlines and airports that are changing,
Right.
right? I mean, travelers themselves are changing their habits and expectations. They want more flexibility, more convenience, more personalized experiences.
Absolutely. It's not just about getting from point A to point B anymore. Travelers want the whole journey to be seamless and enjoyable, something that reflects their individual preferences.
And technology is playing a huge role in making all of that possible. From mobile check-in to digital boarding passes, personalized entertainment, real-time baggage tracking. It's really changing everything about how we travel.
It's definitely an exciting time to be following the aviation industry. There's so much innovation happening. It's all aimed at making air travel more efficient, more enjoyable, more accessible. So whether you're a frequent flyer or just someone who's interested in the world of aviation, it's important to stay informed and keep an eye on these trends.
Because the future of air travel is being shaped right now, and it's going to be a fascinating journey.
Speaking of a fascinating journey, we still have one more interesting development to cover in the Asian aviation market. It has to do with those airport upgrades in Tasmania.
Oh, right. Well, let's take a look at that right after the break.
Okay.
All right, so we're back, and we were just talking about how airports are becoming more than just, places where you catch a flight. They're becoming destinations in their own right.
Yeah, exactly. And Launceston Airport is a perfect example of that. They're really going above and beyond to showcase what Tasmania has to offer.
It's not just adding some shops and restaurants, right?
Yeah.
They're really trying to weave Tasmanian identity into the design of the airport itself.
And it starts with those new food and beverage venues we were talking about. Each one has a unique story to tell about Tasmania, whether it's honoring a local aviation legend or highlighting the region's indigenous heritage, like the Kanamaluka Cafe, named after the Tamar River.
Right, and they're also making sure the airport has all the modern amenities travelers expect. They're expanding the departures hall to make it more spacious, adding fast Wi-Fi, plenty of charging points,
Yeah.
All the essentials.
It's all about creating a positive first impression for travelers, making them feel welcome and comfortable from the moment they arrive.
And they're not just thinking about the travelers, right?
Yeah.
They're working with local businesses to make sure the airport is a showcase for Tasmanian products and ingredients.
Yeah, it's a win-win situation. Travelers get to experience the best of Tasmania, and local businesses get a boost.
Launceston Airport's CEO, Shane O'Hare, has said that this is the biggest renovation they've done in almost 20 years. They're really investing in the future and aiming to make Launceston Airport a world-class facility.
It's great to see an airport taking such a proactive approach. So as we wrap up our look at the Asian aviation market, I think we've seen some really interesting trends emerging.
Yeah, definitely. From strategic partnerships and new business models to airports getting a major makeover, there's a lot of innovation happening.
And what's most impressive is the resilience of the industry. Despite all the challenges of the past few years, airlines and airports are finding new ways to connect people and places.
And they're doing it while creating more enjoyable and sustainable travel experiences. It's an exciting time to be following the aviation industry. Thanks for joining us on this complete aviation solutions deep dive.
It's been a pleasure. Until next time, happy travels.